Hello there, and welcome to Fixing the Sequel Trilogy, the Writers' Room podcast dedicated to fixing the Star Wars sequels. This week is Fixing the Book of Boba Fett, and has nothing to do with the sequels whatsoever. I'm Bryce Quinn, and I'm joined by Robert Rodriguez's biggest fan, Carmelo Keating.
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of...
Love Spy Kids.
Yeah, love Spy Kids.
Love From Dusk Till Dawn.
Dusk Till Dawn, I think, is
Battle
definitely one of the greatest films ever.
I'm also joined by our resident Doctor Who expert, Cole Forfang fan.
Hello, it's me. I'm a fucking nerd.
And also, yeah, we're not really talking about Doctor Who. We were talking about Doctor Who before the show started.
Yeah.
But now we've got to get rid of all of that.
I'm also a huge Boba Fett fan.
Yeah. Following the success of The Mandalorian. Oh my God. Following the success of The Mandalorian, Disney announced a spin-off series, The Book of Boba Fett. The show spent 2 of its 7 episodes not following Boba Fett's story, and instead bringing back Din Djarin and Grogu to the story. Shockingly enough, this was not a popular creative decision. Mello, more from you.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so we're gonna go for a deep dive back through the entire history of Boba Fett very quickly.
Go for it.
So God, when did it come out? Last year? The show?
I looked it
That
up.
was
I think
2 years, eh?
2021.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
It was December 2021. That's right.
Aged me.
Boba Fett came out.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So yeah, the Boba
Good for
Fett show
him.
came out in December 2021, and it was crap.
It was.
Way back when they first announced the original slate of Star Wars films, when they had their three actual movies, 7, 8, and 9, and their 3 anthology films, or maybe potentially 4 anthology films. They had Rogue One, they had Solo.
Yep.
They were going to do Obi-Wan and Boba Fett as movies.
And
And James Mangold was attached to initially direct the Boba Fett one.
right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
This is the thing. Also, there's another episode in which we did Obi-Wan fixes, in which I didn't get to talk about directors, but I was going to suggest James Mangold to direct an Obi-Wan thing.
Yeah.
Today I'll talk about James Mangold again. He's been attached to some Star Wars project
Poor bastard.
since Star Wars happened, and they keep stringing him along. And
man.
we know today that he's attached to this First Jedi.
the Book of
ancient
Eli
movie.
Jedi fucking movie.
Yeah, pretty much. Anyway, little thing about Boba Fett. Funny that they announced a film at all for him way back when, because he is still a very unknown character, despite the fact that we see his origins in the prequel trilogy. We see more of his follow-on from that in the Clone Wars show. As an adult, he's still just this elusive figure. Back in the original trilogy, he was just cool guy in a suit in Empire, who they murdered in a real goofy way in Return of the Jedi because George didn't realize how popular he was. He was actually first introduced in the Star Wars Holiday Special back in 1978 in cartoon form, in which he sounds very different to even how his original voice and then when Tamura Morrison's voice was added.
Yeah.
He appears in Empire in 80, dies in Jedi in 83 or so, we think. His popularity was kind of insane and skyrocketed due to merchandising. His action figure was available to purchase, but Kenner always had this issue because, again, Star Wars was way more popular than
Kenner Toys, right?
Kenner Toys, yeah. Way more popular than expected. And so they did this IOU thing, both for the original Star Wars and for Empire Strikes Back, where they had a back order list of Boba Fett action figures. Where you'd mail it in and send in your money and be like, yo,
when you've got it built, give it to me.
Kind of like PlayStation 5s.
Mello, that's not
that's what I'm given to understand that's how the rollout went.
No.
I owe you.
I owe you one PlayStation 5, says Sony. Yeah. Anyway, so yes, Boba Fett, the PlayStation 5 of 1980.
That's bang on.
True that, eh?
Yep.
All right, so that's Mello's little brief history of Boba Fett, and then
that was
fun
good.
facts about the character in the 80s.
I think Mello should do a Boba Fett documentary.
I really think I should.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who are very passionate about Star Wars toys and the history of those legacy characters.
I mean,
I'm not one of them.
Well, yeah, but when you guys were kids, was Boba Fett one of your favorites? Because it was for me.
No, I actually loved the prequels so much growing up. So I was huge.
So
I was
you were a Jango Fett
huge
guy.
fan of Jango Fett and Anakin Skywalker.
Oh, wow.
As like young kid Anakin Skywalker,
I thought Boba was cool.
and also Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
Qui-Gon's
I
the
thought
coolest.
Boba was cool.
I thought he was
I have a-
gnarly,
I never hated Boba Fett, but I never
Yeah.
understood the hype,
Yeah.
And I didn't like the original trilogy as a kid, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
See, I was always like, oh, Slave One, coolest ship ever. I look at it now and I'm like, what the hell is that?
The point of this episode is to rewrite the Book of Boba Fett and change the title, I think, because it's a bit of a silly title.
Step 1. There's no book.
First off,
What fucking book?
we've created our own canon for this. We've decanonized the entire Mandoverse. So forget about Mando. We are just making a good Boba Fett story. That's the point of today. We've got a bunch of different angles we can approach this at. I've written the episode outline of a 7-episode series, like a limited run kind of series. That's what I've got. I don't know what you guys have.
Yeah, I kind of have a loose, freeform pitch. I have my solid ideas for what I envision the show being.
I kind of like that, but then I have it as an 8-episode structure.
8-episode. Go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just before we do move on, actually, out of the ashes of the cancellation of the Boba Fett movie, in the wake of Solo being shit, is kind of how Mando was allowed to rise when it was pitched by Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni.
Oh, that
Because
makes sense.
They're like, guys, we need a live-action show about a Mandalorian. It has to happen.
yeah, and
Because
then
it's
they
just visually so cool.
and they made Din Djarin from like whole cloth.
Yeah, and they
Interesting.
also happened to make him a bounty hunter. Now, I think that, thinking about it, that's kind of a cop-out.
I mean, it could have just been Boba Fett.
It
It wouldn't
could've.
have really changed too much.
Well,
But they couldn't have told that same story.
Yeah,
No, true.
I know. I've heard like a lot of people throw around that originally it was meant to be a Boba Fett show, but I'm not sure if that's true.
I can see it. But
Yeah.
anyways, so we've got our 3 pitches for us today. We didn't decide who's going to go first, so we can just pick.
Yeah.
I'm happy to take
Cole,
it
you
again.
did it first last time. We'll
Yeah.
stick to you. You're
No
starting out.
worries.
But we're going to go through each pitch. We're going to go one by one. We can ask each other questions and talk about it and discuss and say what we would love to do with the Boba Fett show, where we given infinite money and the ability to be film directors and writers, which will never happen, but it's fun to think about.
Well, I'm going to put all my money towards an episode with Luke Skywalker and Grogu and
Holy shit!
spaceships.
I had the same idea.
I know, geniuses. Hey.
Yeah, so Cole, you're going to start us off. We're going to go through your pitch for a Boba Fett TV show.
Well, I guess the first few things I'd like to say is I think Boba Fett, his context post Disney era with Mando, I think was inherently let down just because Mando's filled the role that Boba Fett needed to take.
Yeah.
So when they went away to think, what the hell do we do with Boba Fett? I think they were ridden into a bit of a corner because they couldn't just do another bounty hunting show. He had to do something else. Now, I agree that his arc should be going from Forgotten Legend bounty hunter to great crime boss. I think that sets him up in a great place for the Mandoverse, especially if at the end he sort of represents the underworld criminal side of this Mandoverse. The show kind of fails at that, unfortunately.
Yes.
The other thing I'd like to say is, because you mentioned the title Book of Boba Fett, I don't mind it. This is not my pitch, but if they were to do a book of Boba Fett, it should be chapters from his life, right? Where it's a
Kind of like my Kenobi pitch.
like a kind of like anthology style where you know you get these little stories and vignettes from his life, seeing the Jewel of Cad Bane and all that, and how he got to where he is now. But my show follows up right after Mando season 2.
Okay.
The first thing I want to get into is the characterization of Boba Fett. I think a lot of people have a problem with him being this honorable, professional bounty hunter, right?
Yeah.
Where he's kind of good honorably. I don't have a problem with him having a code of honor, but I don't like that they removed a lot of what we imagined to be edge to this character. That's one thing missing from the Mandoverse, in my opinion. Characters who are very teetering on.
You have a whole bunch
the
of
darkness.
characters who are all living in the Outer Rim, all seemingly struggling to survive, and all of
Yeah.
them are good people.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
silly.
Exactly, and this was the chance for them to do something
Just a bit
that-
grittier.
Yeah, something a bit darker, you know. And instead, they made him out to be this very honorable good guy looking out for the little man.
Yeah.
And I think we can take that concept and flip it on its head. Because when I see Boba Fett, I don't think of this like nice guy protecting the galaxy, right? I think of real world criminals like Al Capone, John Gotti, and all that. People who did look out for their communities, but very ruthlessly.
Yeah. It's like, this is my community. Don't touch it.
Exactly, right? And the big concept that guides this show idea I have is the idea of saving face. Are you guys familiar with that?
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's particularly prominent in a lot of Asian cultures, but in the context of like the triad or the Yakuza, right? When we think of honor, we have a very Western view where it's like doing the right thing, all that.
Yeah.
Saving face is similar, but it's not the right thing because fundamentally, reputation is the core of it.
yeah.
It's this idea that your name is everything, your reputation, if it's tarnished at all, that's bad. So you are meant to act honorably. But if anyone disrespects you, if anyone brings your reputation down, that's going to have consequences. So that's why you see all these very brutal acts by criminal organizations, especially with the Yakuza and all that, because a lot of it's driven by this sort of dark, twisted take on honor.
Interesting.
And that's what I want to take for Boba Fett. I feel like when this show begins, he should return back to Tatooine. And that's my episode 1. It's him and Fennec Shand returning, and he goes to meet with Bib Fortuna and basically restake his claim as the go-to bounty hunter. But it's been so long since he's been active. He's back to square zero. He doesn't have that same reputation.
So this is like 5 years after he gets
Yeah,
beaten in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, he's presumed dead,
Yeah.
and even the way he died was a little silly and all that. So he's just forgotten about.
Yeah.
The underworld moves fast. The Empire's fallen. It's a very new domain. So he's there to restake his name, and he has to build it from 0 back to 100. Now, that's why reputation becomes so important to Boba Fett. And throughout the series, we're going to see him really do the right thing when it matters, but when anyone crosses him, when anyone does anything to betray him, he doesn't take that lightly like he did in Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
One of the things that made me laugh a lot is you get a lot of these situations in Book of Boba Fett where he's kind of cornered socially, someone tells him that no one respects him, and he just kind of takes it.
There's also a lot of situations where they're like, "Oh, what do you have to offer us?" And he's like, "Please,
yeah, exactly,
help
right.
me, please."
I know, yeah,
And
he's
just like,
pathetic.
"Please do the right thing, right? You'll just help me do the right thing." And they're
Yeah.
like, "We're all criminals. Like, we're all
Yeah.
crime lords. Why would we have any interest in altruism?"
Exactly right. And it makes no sense that a dude who has been in the underworld since the prequels, really, that era, the Clone Wars,
Yeah.
is so bloody unaware of how things go. He's not an audience surrogate character or anything like that. And that was the most disappointing thing about the Book of Boba Fett, in my opinion, because it really tarnished everything that could have been Boba Fett. So, my pitch for the pilot is he returns to Tatooine, and we go to Bib Fortuna's cartel in Jabba's former palace. One thing I didn't like about Book of Boba Fett was we start with him already getting rid of Bib Fortuna. I feel like it shouldn't be that easy for him to just waltz into Jabba's palace, where there's apparently only Bib Fortuna and like 2 Gamorreans or something, and then just shoot him and stake his claim. Dude, you're not a crime lord just because you're sitting on a chair. Like,
he would have some kind of resources, for sure.
Exactly, but it's a bit silly for him to suddenly do that. And the reactions of the townsfolk are totally reasonable. I would not take him seriously. But in this episode, he works with Bib Fortuna because we discover that the Hutt influence here, it's weakened ever since Jabba died.
Yeah.
And Bib Fortuna does not have the same hold. So Boba, Fennec, and a trusted hitman or a trusted bounty hunter of Bib Fortuna, they go out and they're meant to deal with all these rising criminal groups around Tatooine. So they're doing that. Boba starts to see that the influence of these criminal organizations is really terrible on the everyday people. And one thing about this version of Boba is he's a bit like Mike Ehrmantraut from Breaking Bad.
Okay.
Where he's very ruthless to people in the game, but if anyone who's not involved in crime, any innocent person gets hurt, that's not okay.
Right.
So when Boba sees that, that's an injustice because there is this like twisted sense of honor. And he starts to get into contention with this bounty hunter who works for Bib. And as things escalate, they end up getting into a shootout and he ends up killing this bounty hunter, defending himself and Fennec. And he returns to Bib and he's like, "I've done the job. You owe me the money, all that." And Bib's like, "You killed my bounty hunter. Why should I give you anything?" And Bib goes around and starts spreading all this shit about Boba, right? Disrespecting him. And that's when Boba goes up and confronts him.
Yeah.
And he starts to threaten, And Boba, he's a very prideful person here. His flaw is his pride, his stubbornness, and his need to protect his career and build something. And we suddenly see that Bib, he's not going to take this. And he turns against Boba. And the second half of the episode, the climax is all about that conflict until it culminates with Boba killing Bib and staking his claim on Tatooine. Now, the rest of the series, I didn't know exactly where to take it, but what I wanted to explore was the different cultures in the criminal underworld. Because in Star Wars, I don't feel like there's ever really been a big distinction between a lot of the criminal organizations. They all act very similarly. But in the real world, you have Mexican drug cartels, you have the mafia, you have the Yakuza, and they're all so different. One thing I'd like to see about the Hutts, right, is I feel like them being one of the few crime families in Star Wars, they should act like that. We should see the dynamic of family looking after family, very similar to stuff you see in like The Godfather and those mob flicks.
Right.
But another interesting character who I don't really know much about is Prince Zizor.
Yep.
Do you know much about him?
Yeah.
Could you
I
explain?
did back in the day. Leader of the Black Sun, post Return of the Jedi. Does rise to power in the wake of the Empire, like the crime syndicates did. I think he gets. Does he get betrayed and murdered or something at some point?
I believe so.
Yeah. Has a confrontation with Luke, I believe.
I think so. Yeah.
Anyway, I knew a little bit about this guy.
Who's Prince of what? Is he a Hutt?
Prince of the Black Sun, who are from Clone Wars.
I don't know what the Black Sun is.
They're a crime syndicate.
Of what? Humans? What?
No,
They're like
they're-
aliens
Yeah,
or what, yeah.
aliens. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's like this purple guy.
Okay.
Has a ponytail, I think. Like a high one. But I don't know much about him, but I always thought he looked cool, and I'd like to know more about
Cool
him.
design. Stick him in. You know?
Yeah, and for the fans, I feel like whenever I've seen him at least, he's always had this strange presence, and I feel, even though I don't know much about him, I think the idea of this very powerful crime lord who's intergalactic, not just on Tatooine, that sounds like a good villain for the series. And other characters I like Ty Bazan from the Star Wars Empire at War games, and his whole thing was he was a criminal who started to conglomerate a lot of these falling apart crime organizations during the Galactic Civil War until he built like this massive consortium. So what I want to see is these dynamics and this politicking between all these groups.
Okay.
Amidst Boba's rise, where every episode, his empire starts to grow. So at first it's staking his claim on Tatooine, getting to know the people. Then he's assembling a crew. Then he's starting to make deals and expand his influence, actually build an empire. Because what I like about shows like Breaking Bad is there's a clear progression.
Yeah.
It gives you something to latch onto and something to say, oh, where does this go? Oh, is he going to lose this? You don't really see that with Book of Boba Fett. He just shows up.
No,
and
absolutely not.
it's just like suddenly, oh, there's just people here. Black Chrysanthemum mysteriously
He
just
just rocks
joins
up.
the side.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of that, I'm just like, man, why can't we actually see this? And I want moments that are very, Game of Thrones, where it's like Red Wedding stuff, where you see betrayals, you see like those Godfather moments where people are actually eliminating the competition after these great plans. And the final thing is I want an exploration about Boba Fett as a character, a real focus on him. And parts of that come in seeing flashbacks every now and then, which they tried to do in Book of Boba Fett, but some of them were kind of weird. I mean,
Oh god, yeah. The green tint, the famous green tint on the
God,
the
yeah.
back to flashbacks. Yeah.
yeah, or when like just him like looking at Camino out the window,
Yeah.
in the back to tank. So we're not gonna have the fucking back to tank. Yeah, but I'd like to see the Cad Bane duel.
Yeah.
Because Cad Bane so wasted in Book of Boba Fett.
Absolutely.
Comes out of nowhere, earns no place in the story, and dies in an episode.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
So the way I think Cad Bane should be introduced is, I think halfway through the series, as Boba Fett starts to, get on people's nerves, we get a episodic flashback story amidst one of his like adventures dealing with like the Hutts or something. And it's the tale, it's that like unfinished Clone Wars episode where he's actually fighting his mentor Cad Bane. And you see the journey from them as mentors, how Boba became the bounty hunter he is, and then Cad Bane's death.
That's cool.
Yeah, but then I think I don't mind the idea of Cad Bane coming back, but I think we need that context of, oh, he was dead, similar to Boba, right?
And what is their relationship? Like, how do these people know each other? Because
Yeah.
the Boba Fett show banked very heavily on people having already seen the Clone Wars.
Exactly. it's
Because
just
if
some
you
dude.
haven't, if you don't know anything about their relationship, they're just two people who don't like each other, and they're, one's a blue alien, and you've
Yeah,
got
yeah.
no other context outside of that.
Yeah, exactly. As an audience member, what are you meant to do besides like watch 7 seasons of Clone Wars?
Yeah.
So after introducing him, then you can bring Cad Bane in, and then you can have that tumultuous
Yeah.
relationship. And I think the last thing I want to see is actual moments where Boba is ruthless, where he actually showcases that he is
Yeah.
a powerful leader and not just some dude who doesn't even realize that a crime boss should hire muscle. Like, that was ridiculous. Dude, he was hired muscle. Like,
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's so
something
silly.
happened to him in the Sarlacc pit, I'll say that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think we see him being ruthless in that fight in Mando Season 2. Where
Yeah,
he
exactly.
he rocks up out of nowhere and he kills some stormtroopers,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
smashes their helmets to bits.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh, I can't wait for the Boba Fett show now. And then none of that.
None of
He
it.
completely like flips character
Exactly.
and becomes so child friendly.
Yeah,
I just couldn't believe it.
It's like the whole like, oh, store owner, you're charging too much. These kids will work for me now. And
Exactly.
It's like, what?
I can see like what you're going for there as well. It's sort of like a Succession or a Breaking Bad
It's like,
style.
I see it like kind of like Godfather, the
Prestige
Sopranos.
prestige style TV where
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
lot of very interesting politics and dynamics happening between these characters, and it's all about power moves and
Yes.
people trying to become more powerful and be on top.
Yeah. But
yeah.
also, exactly that. But also how Boba changes us, and like how this man, the only one who has this honor, even though it's twisted,
Yeah.
is staking his claim. There.
Does this twisted honor earn him success and victory, or is it his flaw that kills him in the end?
It's a bit of both, right?
Okay.
Because
Because I know
his-
in Breaking Bad, it's very much like that's the thing that kills him in
absolutely.
the end. you know?
Exactly, yeah. And that's one of the things I always liked about Walter White It's the fact he can quit.
He could
But-
quit like
yeah.
in season 1. Like he's good, you know.
Exactly, but
But he chooses
no, he
not to
has
because
to.
he loves it. He
he has
wants
to
to be
hold
on
the
top.
name. Exactly. So I want to see that be Boba's flaw.
Yeah.
It's also what's driving him to get far enough to build that empire because he has a sense that he needs legacy, he needs to carry on his father's name, all that.
Interesting.
But it's what gets him into those moments where he could turn away, but no, someone said something nasty to him, you know.
Mm.
Fuck you, I'm gonna kill like that mob boss, you know.
Yep.
And another moment I imagine as well is because he's also about protecting the sense that he is kind of a good person. When he expands his empire, you know, one of his underlings does something dishonorable, so he personally like punishes them for that. And I think this needs to be his downfall in some capacity, and I'd like to see him recoup at Camino, the ruins of Camino, and that can be an episode where he's forced to reconcile with himself right before the finale, where he defeats Prince Zizor, all of that, conglomerates his empire, and at the very end of the show establishes himself as the predominant crime lord in the galaxy, which sets him up to be that huge influence on the dark side of the galaxy for the Mandoverse. So that's kind of like my rough idea of what the show should be.
Any questions for you, Miller?
So you've still got Mando season 1 and 2.
Yes.
Taking place,
So
yeah.
I want it to be a continuation. I want it to fit in.
Okay.
Well, we're going to be scrapping those entirely, Miller.
Yeah.
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 And it will be called Book of Boba Fett.
Who's reading the book?
Nice.
Is it old man Boba in a rocking chair in like 50 years?
Yeah, it's got to be. Eh?
Reading to his grandkids?
I'll go next, Miller.
Yeah,
And you can
go
go
for it.
last. Alrighty. So I got my 7 episodes. I've got each episode outline. I'm going to do episode by episode, and between each, you guys can ask questions and ask for context, because I'm sure I've left a lot of stuff out.
Sick. How many episodes of your 7 episodes are just The Mandalorian?
There is 0.
Oh, wow.
Zero
That's
Mandalorian
crazy.
episodes in this one. Okay, episode 1, The Desert. Boba Fett crawls free of the Sarlacc pit, is imprisoned by Tusken Raiders, and becomes one of them. He then helps them defend themselves from a bike gang, but ultimately the Tuskens are all murdered. Boba Fett then swears vengeance on the gang and leaves the desert behind. Exactly as we see in the Boba Fett show, but without the cutting back and forth between time. Like, this is all happening in just like one continuous.
Yep.
I really like that from the Boba Fett show. I actually really enjoyed the whole part of the story with the Tusken Raiders. I thought it was really fun and endearing, and
Yeah, I liked it.
it's I've always loved that, you know, as much as, you know, Mando and Boba Fett miss a lot of the shots, the one thing I have always loved is the approach to Tusken Raiders. I thought that was really interesting, just like why make these just like mindless you know, nomad people in the desert like evil? Why not introduce some culture and some lore to them as well? Because, you know, I just thought it was interesting. I thought that was a great way to start the show as well. Okay, episode 2, The Palace. Boba Fett stakes out Jabba's palace, returning there under the pretense of getting back into the business. He then murders his way through it and kills Bib Fortuna. After that, he addresses the remaining bounty hunters and gets a crew together of, I want to keep Black Crescent in it because he's awesome.
He's cool.
Yeah, I love him.
As well as an assassin droid and a sniper. I have no interest in bringing Fennec Shand into this.
Yep.
I've got no specific people. I was like, oh, maybe Dengar. Dengar's kind of, he's got a fire knife. I don't know.
Yep.
It doesn't really matter. He's got 3 bounty hunters now. After that, he takes back his ship, the Slave One. So this episode, so these are like the 2 Tatooine episodes. And it's kind of like the beginning of his journey. And with this show, I've got a pitch. It's it's like a weird mix between Andor and John Wick. So
yeah.
he's got this, the inciting incident for him is this, you know, horrible thing that happens. He rejects being a bounty hunter. He has the ability to leave the desert and he chooses not to. He's like, I'm going to stay with the Tuskens instead. But despite that, the biker gangs find and take away any semblance of a new life that he could have hoped to build. And he's like, fine, I'm never going to escape this life of violence. I may as well like embrace it and get the revenge that I want now because these people who I sort of cared about have been taken away from me. And then he just, you know, murders his way through Jabba's palace. The Jabba's palace fight, he walks through, he's like, hey, Bib, I'm here to pick up a job. Completely a lie. And he's just going through each room and he's scoping it out and walking through it, you know, in the Din Djarin way.
Yeah.
So that when you get to the action scene in the second half of the episode, all of the locations he's walked through are the one-shot action scene that he is now fighting his way through. I really like that. And then immediately after addresses all the anyone who's not dead. And he's like, well, I've killed Bib Fortuna. You can join me if you want. And takes back his ship. This takes us to episode 3, The Ring. Boba Fett and his new crew track down the biker gang that killed the Tusken Raiders, quickly discovering the true perpetrators behind the raid, the Pike Syndicate. This takes the crew to The Ring, an outer rim space station run by the Pikes and their associates. The crew head to the Ring and split up, doing reconnaissance and finding the weak link that will allow them to take out the heads of the Ring. The episode ends with one of the crew being approached by a Pike Syndicate spy and offering them a deal. So yeah, starts out with the action scene in this one. They take out the biker gang. It's Slave One versus biker gang. They didn't stand a chance, much like the show. And then after that, you know, they interrogate whoever's left, and then they find out the Pikes hired them to take out the Tuskens to expand their operations on Tatooine or whatever. And they're like, all right, let's go kill the Pikes. And the bounty crew are like, what? We're going to go kill the Pikes? And they go to their space station where they run a lot of their operations from. And then they stake it out, and that's the episode there. Any questions so far, guys?
Nice. No, I like that. And I like that you're trying to get Tatooine out of the way as well.
It wasn't even that I was trying to get out of the way.
Yeah.
It's just like, what's the natural progression of this like revenge story? And then it became the Andor story of like each, like there's 2 episodes here, 2 episodes here.
Yeah, it's like these arcs.
And you kind of get like these mini arcs as well. Definitely not as long or well thought out as Andor, but
yeah, of course, it's Andor, right?
Exactly.
But I think the idea of also building the crew is something, especially for like a crime story, that's something that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And it's something we want to see. We don't want to just see like Boba and some lackeys, you know?
Yeah. So episode 3 is the heist preparation. Episode 4 is the heist. So the crew launched their plan, an intricate heist designed to put all the leaders of the ring in one room where Boba Fett and his crew can take them all down at once. But Boba Fett is betrayed and must kill his way through all 3 of his new crewmates. Very much like video game style, getting to the top tower, who have been bought out by the Pikes. So yeah, all 3 of them turn against him, and he has to fight each one by one. And by the time he gets to the Pikes, he's like fucked up, but he wins. He gets a moment alone with the leaders of the ring, who try and bargain for their lives, and he guns all of them down. As he leaves the ring, Boba Fett activates a sonic charge, or is it seismic charge? Seismic charge, destroying the Pikes' headquarters and sending a message to the underworld. However, the battles have left Boba Fett wounded and exhausted. So that's episode 4, which I kind of wrote those first 4 episodes in my head. I'm like, that's awesome. Just you set up the heist, you do the heist, but the twist in the heist is that all of them turn against him, and he has to kill his way to continue doing the heist and take out the leaders of the ring.
And you've had time to come and know these characters
as
well, so it's not just throwaway.
Yeah.
It's like actual stakes and actual conflict.
And what I haven't obviously written any like character drama stuff into this, but in my head, it's very much like everyone's kind of asking him like, what are you doing? Like, why are you going for the Pikes? Like, yes, you can do this, but what is the point? Like, any revenge you get, do you know how many Pikes there are? Like, there are so many of these dudes, and they're running around the entire galaxy. It's not just here, like, they're everywhere. Why even bother killing these ones? And it's just like, I love in John Wick when he gets asked that question. Like, what is the point of this revenge? Like, you're not going to change anything. You cannot change the status quo. And John Wick's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm going to just keep killing people until I die. And I've always found that to be a really compelling kind of question. It's a silly question, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, but it's like he's driven.
Exactly.
He's just driven.
Episode 5, The Hunter. After his huge fight with the Pikes and his turncoat crew, Boba Fett is severely injured and heads for the hut world of Nar Shaddaa. Is that how you say it? Nar Shaddaa? I think that's how you say it.
Nar Shaddaa,
Yeah. He walks into a hut-owned healing house and climbs into a Bacta tank. Soon after, Pike Syndicate bounty hunters begin arriving in droves to surround the healing house, hunting Boba Fett. But Fett's gambit has worked, and the Hutts send a hunter of their own, Bosk. The Trandoshan hunts the Pike bounty hunters like the Predator, and the fight goes from the streets to the healing house all the way up until Boba Fett's tank. At that point, Boba Fett smashes through the Bacta tank at the last minute and kills the final bounty hunter. He and Bosk reunite, and the Trandoshan says that Boba Fett has some explaining to do. Fett says that he will before climbing back into the Bacta tank. So he kind of runs to the Hutt world to hide there.
Yeah.
Banking on the goodwill he may or may not have bought.
Yeah.
By taking out Bib Fortuna and by taking out the Pikes and their ring.
Did he smash out? When you say smashed out of the Bacta tank, is it broke? Was there another one?
There is another one that he climbs into after. There's like a row.
Flicks a credit to the bathhouse owner, who's just like, bathhouse owner?
Yeah.
He's like, what are you doing? I won't smash out of this one.
So in my head, I've got it another John Wick scene. There's a doctor in John Wick 3 right at the start when he walks in. He's like, I've got 5 minutes left before he runs out of time. And the doctor's like, I guess I can heal you. And he heals you. And he heals John Wick. And then on his way out, he's like, you have to shoot me. So he shoots him in the leg to make it look like he put up a fight or something. I love that. I've got a similar image in my head of this.
Can we cast Thundercat as the owner of this healing house?
I really don't want to.
Thundercat.
Yeah,
he's the rapper who's in. Is he a rapper?
No, he's like this jazz bassist.
Yeah, he's a music producer.
And he's
in Book of Boba Fett.
He's the cyborg doctor.
Yeah.
That's right. That guy. Whoop. Anyway.
So yeah, I don't want that.
I'll take Thundercat for my draft.
But I do love Bosk being in this.
Yes.
I wanted to find a way to include Bosk in
this.
It's
like everyone loves the scene in Emperor Strikes Back.
You see the line
the bounty hunters.
The most interesting looking characters in the entire movie.
Yeah.
And they just lying there just saying nothing.
It's pretty silly that Book of Boba Fett never pulled from that, really.
It is silly. I agree.
Yeah.
Episode 6, The Parlay. Boba Fett meets with Gracchus the Hutt and his court, including Bosk. The Pikes have also been invited to the Parlay and have hired Cad Bane as their champion. Fut says the hut. Fut.
Fut says the hut. I'm in a rut. New Dr. Seuss.
That is some Dr. Seuss shit. Fett says the Hutts owe him for killing the Pike Ring and for killing Bib Fortuna. Gracchus says that both of those were under control and that Fett owes the Hutts for saving his life. On top of that, Fett has caused an upheaval and the Pikes desire recompense. A standoff builds as Fett has lost all of his allies and is surrounded by enemies. He fires first and a huge shootout follows. Cad Bane and Boba Fett try to kill each other while the Hutts slaughter the Pikes who have come to the parley. So it's just an absolute fracas. Boba Fett and Cad Bane have each other by the throat, but Boba is saved by Bossk, who tells him to run and has like a bit of... I read a little bit of like some descriptions of the comics and it seemed like they had like this kind of friendly rivalry between the two of them.
Initially, yeah.
Yeah. And then Fett escapes in the Slave One and heads for the end of the road, the Pike homeworld. Yeah, so I really liked there's like a comic that leads right up to Empire Strikes Back, and they're like, oh, like they've got like some banter back and forth. Bossk seems like a snarky dude. I love his attitude.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the Clone Wars episode with Bossk?
No.
Okay, it's where he's hunting Chewbacca.
Yeah, I read about that one as well, but I don't know anything about it. He seemed like a really fun character, and then like when Boba Fett loses Han Solo in Carbonite, Bossk tracks him down to try and kill him, and then Boba Fett leaves him tied to a rock or something.
In the canon comics, there's this thing called the War of the Bounty Hunters, where it's like everyone's just fighting for the corpse of, or the carbonite corpse of Han Solo.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Which I think is like a really fun concept, and I love the idea that these bounty hunters have these rivalries, but they're also like they stick to the code.
Yep.
Bossk, it says in there, really sticks to the code. Like he's super all about the code.
Right.
That's what it said in the description. So I was like, oh, I like this. I'm playing with something.
And I like that it is so similar to like the code in John Wick as well.
Yeah.
There's like this unspoken
Yes.
sort of like respect between
Exactly.
all
So
of
that's what kind of like Cad Bane and Boba Fett obviously have a very long and complicated relationship. But I love the idea that Bossk is like, you know what, Boba Fett, I like you. I'm gonna try and keep you alive if I can.
Exactly. Yeah, because their word is so important.
Yeah.
It's everything they have going for them. And I also love the parlay because it's one of those red wedding moments where it's like, ooh.
I love the parlay because you've got Gracchus the Hutt, you've got Cad Bane, Bossk, and Boba Fett, and a bunch of Pikes around a table, and they're all just this big standoff, and then it all devolves into this huge brawl in whatever the Hutt palace looks like on Nar Shaddaa. Episode 7, The End. Boba is chased through space by Pikes and Cad Bane, engaged in a huge space battle above Obadiah, the Pike homeworld. The Slave One is hit, and Fett has to jump ship in the low atmosphere and watch his ship crash on the planet's surface. I love destroying starships.
Wait, please tell me that when Slave One explodes, a seismic charge. It hits the ground, but then it's like you got this half in the ground, like blah,
Absolutely, that's great. He walks the rest of the way to the high fortress of the Pike Syndicate, fighting his way to the highest tower by using every weapon in his arsenal. Finally, he comes face to face with Cad Bane, and they have their standoff. Boba Fett wins, but Cad Bane is able to fatally wound Fett before he dies. Bleeding out, Fett walks into the apartments of the leader of the Pike Syndicate, and they share a cup of tea. The Pike leader dies peacefully from the poison, and Boba Fett lays down, bleeding out and poisoned, ready to die.
That's very John Wick.
Very.
Yeah.
But he is saved by Kira and Han Solo, and that is where we end the show. And I would love to do... Solo. I don't know where this is going. It's barely okay. But the idea
the comic characters coming
Kira seeing all of this upheaval in the underworld and everything, going, oh, Boba Fett's gone he's fully broken bad. He clearly doesn't care about the Hutts or the Syndicates or anything. I'm going to try and get him and bring him into our cause, which is working with the New Republic to bring the Outer Rim into control and stop the Kuiper lasers being built. Yep. And some of the lore stuff we've been building in the other part of the show.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a fun way to end it, as Boba Fett is super, super fucked up. But doesn't fully die at the end of season 1. But yeah, that's my pitch for the show. It was a fun time writing that.
Yeah. No, I think that's really cool. And one of the things I'm enjoying about all this, is just imagining Tamura Morrison in all these situations.
Oh my god, yeah.
Because he's a phenomenal actor, and in my opinion, he did carry Book of Boba Fett at times.
Oh, at times, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember I had some friends who were like, Tamura Morrison during Book of Boba Fett. I'm like, no, easily the best one in the show.
He's a great actor, and he can really bring the heat as Boba Fett.
Exactly.
I would just love to see, and I don't know, in each of those 7 episodes, there is at least one action scene.
Yeah.
And it just having it be this action-packed show about revenge and the futility of fighting against the underworld and against crime itself. It's like, there's no point. The Pikes are going to come back. Your revenge is meaningless. And having that final cup of tea scene where the Pike is like, I'm the leader of the Pikes on Obadiah, but there is always going to be more of us. We're always going to come back. You cannot stop the spice trade. It's unstoppable. And Boba Fett's like, I don't care. I need to kill you. I have nothing else. What else am I going to do? Go back to being a bounty hunter? I didn't want to be a bounty hunter. I chose to give up that life, and then it was taken from me. My new life was taken from me. I have nothing now. which I thought was I thought
I
was
like
fun.
that, yeah.
It's very John Wick, of course, but
yeah,
I love
yeah,
John
yeah,
Wick.
but I like that.
I'm
yeah.
not trying to hide my love for John Wick here.
No, it's a good influence in that story you're telling.
Rightio. Okay, this is going to be different once again.
Yeah, let's do it.
Voice. Rightio. Boba Fett, a Star Wars story.
God.
What?
Okay.
Okay, it's still a show. I'm thinking like 8 episodes. Bit lengthier, maybe like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so now there is a universe in which Robert Rodriguez could actually direct this one.
Yes.
I'm going to talk about a little bit about some problems that were with the existing Boba Fett first. One of the things which was like the Obi-Wan show, the target audience was completely wrong.
Oh my
God,
God.
yeah.
Yeah. So Robert Rodriguez, had they brought him on and be like, hey, you know your real dark, gritty shit? Do that.
Do that.
Which I think is the right direction to take for a Boba
Mm.
Fett show.
Yes.
But no, they said, do all of your styles. Do Spy Kids and Machete, you know? Do
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Weird.
Ugh.
So that's why we ended up with that. If not Robert, then James Mangold
yeah.
would actually be great. Okay. This show is the climax of Boba's life.
Yep.
He's had a very long life. He's been a bounty hunter since he was like 14.
Mhm.
What we don't know much about him, but from what we're given to understand, I'm running with simply with that. There's our jumping off point. He is a heartless criminal. He only cares about himself. He only cares about getting paid. He's a playboy, and I have to imagine that at this point he's pretty well off.
Yeah.
He's the best bounty hunter in the galaxy.
Yeah.
I think he's pretty wealthy. As
I guess
far
the
as bounty
question
hunters
is, what
can
does he
get-
even
can be.
spend his money on? If it's not like maybe like prostitutes, I don't know.
I don't think he needs prostitutes.
yeah.
I think he
Yeah,
can
no.
pull, honestly.
And just like
Um,
alcohol and drugs, he doesn't seem to be someone who lives in like avarice, you know, or
No, no.
or like a hedonistic criminal kind of thing.
Tech, save it, like
Maybe he
he'd
just likes hoarding money.
he'd
maybe.
reinvest it, or he'd just
Yeah.
keep it to himself, But either way, I still think he'd be pretty well off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to imagine he has a pretty well protected home somewhere as
Yeah,
well, just
okay.
like a home base. It can't just be slave one somewhere
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you can go back to between jobs. So it'll be an underworld action-packed thriller about a man enacting his revenge. By the end of it, Boba will be done with being a bounty hunter. That's not his initial goal. I don't think that's something he initially realizes in my version that he wants. But yeah, he's again well off enough to be able to afford this kind of final adventure. So I would begin again with he climbs out of the Sarlacc pit. He still has all of his armor. It's a bit of a struggle to get out, of course, and sees amidst the the debris of the sail barge. He manages to get his way back to Jabba's palace. Whether or not he has a run-in with Tusken Raiders, has to fight them off. If he did, he would win,
Yes.
and he wouldn't be stuck there with them. He'd get back to Jabba's.
I forgot to point out, the Jawas also take his armor from him,
Yeah.
and he has to get
Yeah.
it back at some
Yeah.
point.
God,
but
yeah.
I liked that thing as well. I thought that was fun.
In my version, he keeps his armor. So he gets back to Jabba's palace. Bib Fortuna is there. There's not many other people left, it's just the people who he's got around him. Bib Fortuna can't exactly hold this place. If a Hutt has died, the other Hutts will step in because such is their right. It's their inheritance. So for now, he's kind of just there scrambling, fucking, I kind of got this seed of power for now. What do I do? I don't want to call in the other Hutts. I could try and take this. I could try and take the fortune. Boba walks in. He demands his pay.
Is this immediately after Return of the
This is
after
a little whiles. He's been gone for a little while. So I think when
Okay.
he comes back in, Bib would be like, Boba, I thought you were dead.
Yeah.
This is crazy. And he's just no nonsense. He's like, I want to get paid.
Yeah.
I want, he was there for a job. He brought Han in. He would have got paid for that job. But, he was on Jabba's roster and he was there as protection. I think we could have a bit of an exchange between Bib and Boba being like, I want to get paid. And he's like, yeah, well, you didn't exactly defend Jabba, did you? Because he's dead.
Yeah.
Bit of a, you've actually, best bounty hunter in the galaxy. He kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't like that much. Anyway, basically after refusing to pay him, he just point blank kills him and then would go on a bit of a murdering spree of anyone else in the palace who was standing up against him. I imagine he sends a hologram to the Hutts being like, I've rid Jabba's palace of this scum, courtesy of Boba Fett.
Yeah, nice.
Cuts the call, takes off, gets Slave One back, goes back to the Sarlacc. I've got this idea of his version of killing the Sarlacc is much the same as how R2 took care of those super battle droids. In episode 2, he leaks oil from Slave One and sets the fucking thing on fire. Because how else do you kill a big ass creature?
Yeah.
Didn't they drop a
That's on the
seismic charge into it in the show?
They did
yeah,
drop
but
seismic
I like
they did
that.
it
That one's also
so,
cool.
It was very
sloppily.
stupid, but I like
Yeah.
I feel like that's something Boba would do, just pettily.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, he's off. We're off Tatooine.
Yep.
See you later. No nonsense. So he does go back to this home base, whatever. He needs to go get patched up. When he goes back to this home base, there's like sort of people there that he knows will kind of work for him, I guess. Let's call it like some sort of like space mansion-ish sort of thing, where they're like really surprised to see him. Like word has carried in maybe a few weeks that it's like, yeah, he died. It's also been a big few weeks for the galaxy. The Emperor and Darth Vader are dead.
There's a lot of galactic upheaval.
Yeah. And the number one people that are on Boba's minds are these people who are now the most feared people in the galaxy / legendary people in the galaxy, which is Luke Skywalker, Leia, Han. Luke Skywalker, you could say, is responsible for having killed Jabba the Hutt, Darth Vader, and the Emperor within the span of a week.
Yes.
Pretty terrifying, depending on which side of the sphere that you're on. But anyway, so he gets patched up, and he, is immediately like, right. He's just talking to like some droid who's kind of like maybe his helper droid. He's like, what's the next job? Let's just get back to business, get back to normal. Okay, it was a blip in the road, because Boba's faced challenges before. Like back when he was a teen, when he tried to get revenge on Mace Windu, he went to prison for 2 years, got broken out. It's nothing.
So that's just quickly. That's where I kind of came down with it. It was like, because I was like, does he chase after Luke Skywalker, or does he not really care? Because he's been in the game for so long.
He has been in the game for so long.
He's not a perfect bounty hunter. He's really good.
Yeah.
But sometimes if shit happens, he got an unlucky hit to the jetpack, sent him into the Sarlacc, and he almost died.
Yeah.
But I feel like he wouldn't necessarily blame Luke
not,
Skywalker in those.
It's nothing personal.
It's not. It's business. It's just business.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I came.
That's where you guys come in.
Yeah.
I'm
Unless
not
he was-
at all.
Yeah, well, maybe he's
Bear with
saving
me.
face.
No,
you know?
like go for it. I just
Yeah.
was like, I wanted him to chase down Luke Skywalker, but ultimately I went away from that. But I'm curious to hear your take.
Yeah. His next bounty is a massive one. Oh, sorry. No, I wanted him to do a smaller bounty before he did another big one.
Yeah.
In which it's a bit more of a struggle this time. It is a bit tougher. He has actually taken some damage from this time in the Sarlacc pit, but also there's just something about him and his demeanor of doing it where it's just like, oh, his heart's just not in it. And instead of going for this, he could have had this be a dead or alive, bring this person in situation. Rather than the struggle of the bring them in alive, he's just like makes it quick and goes for the kill. Yeah. Which is perhaps a little bit like unusual for him. So he brings him into the huts. They offer him another job, a big job, now that he's like kind of like earned back their favor of like, okay, you are the Boba that we say you are. It's like, right, we want the heads of the people who killed Jabba. Yeah. We want Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, Lando. He's like, okay, well, sure, let's go after it. But he definitely has that personal stake where I think he wants revenge. Yeah. He's never taken a hit like that. He did almost die.
I definitely think in the context of having a bounty, that definitely works.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I'll take that fucking... You know what? Yeah, I'll take that fucking bounty. Let's do it.
Fuck these fucking guys.
Yeah.
But in doing so, he has to assemble a team.
Yeah, nice.
So we get my little murderer's row of bounty hunters. We get like Chrysanthemum. We get Bosk. We get Dengar. Yeah. We might even... Those two actually have a pretty good relationship in the EU, and Boba Fett was his best man at his wedding.
Oh.
That's funny.
I'm not saying we do that, but
put the wedding
there's
in.
a bit more of it. These two have definitely worked together before, and Bosk. IG-11.
Okay.
Also putting IG-11 in there. And Fennec Shand, different type of Fennec
IG-11,
Shand.
like the Taika Waititi IG-11.
That's IG-88.
Okay, yeah.
The original. Whatever the original was.
I had IG-88 written down, so
yes.
that's the original.
Yeah, the one from Empire. Yeah,
yeah.
IG-88, I want that one.
Yep.
And Fennec Shand, and Fennec is the sniper of the group because everyone's got their role.
Yeah.
But Fennec's different sort of.
Just
like the story is not at all the same as how we first met her last
She's
time.
still a cold-blooded assassin. How about that?
Yeah, literally.
How about an actual criminal who kills people?
No, exactly. So he puts this team together. It's like, okay, we've got these impossible odds, but we're taking down, like the Jedi and all of his friends. Yeah. And so, then the whole show becomes this kind of like heist bounty hunt show in which we get to see the real like ins and outs of how they would pull off an operation like this. And we're also evenly matched 6 on 6, which is really fun. But their thing is they pick them off one by one is the easiest way. And we get to see some crossover with, okay, all these heroes are working together to now try and topple the Empire at these different points and different battles and shit across the galaxy. And our bounty hunters are kind of just like lurking after them the whole time, being like, okay, we get this scenario to grab Chewie whilst they're doing the liberation of Kashyyyk.
Yeah, right.
And that then, it sets it off to the crew that like, oh shit, we've lost, we got to go, we'll send Lando and Han after Chewie. Cool, thanks. Get you two as well. Yeah. The last person who would come into the fold is Luke, and that's where everything changes. Whereas, it's been a struggle, but these bounty hunters have been able to take these heroes one by one. Yeah. Take them all in, but it's like, nah. At this point, genuinely, there's just something completely different about Luke, and this is the first time we get to see him as he is a Jedi now. He's dealt with his Darth Vader stuff, and he is a force to be reckoned with. Yeah. So that's where everything would kind of start to go wrong. But yeah, so in delving into a bit more of the depth of Boba, I kind of want this, over the course of this show, for him to find his version of inner peace.
Yeah.
I want him to become disillusioned with bounty hunting and realizing that, maybe he's a bit old for this and that he doesn't have to keep doing this.
Yeah.
That bounty hunting isn't everything. I want his enemies to continue to fear him, but I like the idea that this sort of underlying journey for the people around him is that they will gain more respect for him. Kind of like, they said that in the show, like very openly, and they went about it completely the wrong way, that they're just like, it's not about fear, it's about respect. And he just came in and was like, that's my policy. I don't want to be feared, I want to be respected. And I'm like, well, that's dumb. No, of course you want to be feared.
You want to be feared. You're an evil criminal.
Yeah, he's a bad person.
He's
Make
a
no
bounty
mistake.
hunter.
He's a bad person.
Yeah.
But he does, earn more of this respect from his peers. Even though he's taken this knock, he does have to, rebuild his reputation because he did lose. He lost his massive job. And he was under Jabba's employ when Jabba died. That's not great for him. And all these other bounty hunters would give him a lot of shit for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, so over the course, he does earn their respect to the point where it's like, there's a moment where they've kind of all abandoned him. All is lost. Luke is winning. But they do come back to save him at a moment where it's like, because again, they've earned his respect. And even though you think that these heartless, ruthless, just about the job bounty hunters, we're gonna go back for him.
But there is also that, like, if we go back and save Boba Fett,
Yeah.
and we also get, Luke, Han, and Leia and take them out, that's huge for us. Like, that makes us look great in the eyes of the Hutts. Like, there's a lot in it for them as well, but also they wouldn't have gone back if they didn't respect Boba Fett and think that there was a chance to pull it off.
Yeah.
So yeah, they do go back to save him. All in the end, they don't get them to take them back to the Hutts. They do lose, and they have to go back to the Hutts empty-handed, and we have to get to have this whole bit between these 6 bounty hunters and the Hutts being like, well, what the fuck, guys?
Yeah.
You had a job today, and we get to have this whole, his disillusionment with being a bounty hunter comes full circle, and he just gets to say a massive fuck you, essentially, and just, either walks off scot-free or they shoot their way out and is like, fuck this.
I was about to
See
say
you
they
later.
should kill them.
Yeah. So they shoot their way out, whether or not they kill all of the Hutts, because again, that's dangerous.
Whatever the Hutts
Yeah.
immediately. Like, whatever immediate Hutts.
This group is,
Yeah.
or just the one, and then
Yeah.
his cronies, they're
Yeah.
just like, nah, fuck
Yeah.
it, see you later. They do part ways and stuff like that, but then I have some other like follow-on ideas of like, okay, what other ways that this story could go in kind of like a fourth act, as it were, once the main story is done, where it's like Boba could stand trial for his hand in working for the Empire,
Mhm.
And the implications of bounty hunting actually comes into question, and like, what's the morality of that, where it's like, okay, they were just doing a job, but they were doing a job for the Empire.
Yeah.
And Boba, in particular, did some really atrocious shit for them. He worked for them,
Yeah.
I think, the most. He worked directly for Vader. So that's, interesting stuff there. I would like to see the New Republic actually establish a bounty hunters guild in the wake of these trials.
Yes.
Where bounty hunting is actually regulated for the very first time.
It makes sense because it would have to be
Yes,
because
yeah.
of everything that's going on.
Yeah, and up until this point it wasn't. And when it came to the Empire, as we've spoken about many times before, it's kind of just like this coexistence thing where we'll allow you to do your stuff. Don't fuck with us. And if you annoy us, we'll destroy you. But we're also going to use you. We're going to use the bounty hunters when we need them.
Absolutely. And it feels
Yeah.
like it would be something that is illegal under the Empire. It's like no bounty hunting. But the Empire makes the laws.
Yeah.
They don't give
Yeah.
a shit. They can break as many laws as they want. There's no war
Exactly.
crimes for them. They control the galaxy. So
Yeah.
they can hire bounty hunters if they
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
And
So the change in the way that like bounty hunting is regulated and kind of perceived by the public over the course of this show is just kind of reflective of
Yeah.
Boba Fett's change in mindset when it comes to it.
You just want your fourth act from Oppenheimer where it's a
I
court
do,
trial.
absolutely.
I'm sold.
But he would get his kind of happy ending, and whether or not again this trial would probably see things be like, nah, Boba, you're guilty as shit, and then maybe they break him out. Maybe his his peers that he's developed this respect with would help him once again, or maybe this is the instance in which they help him. Either way, I see him taking on just like a what's Grief Karga's role in the actual guild?
Like a handler.
Yeah, he's like a what was his role? A
Something like
bounty.
that.
Quest giver.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much that.
Quest giver.
Where that's very profitable for him,
Yeah.
and he doesn't have to do the bounties anymore, but he can distribute them, and he can be this kind of like man at the top of it all, head bounty hunter, top of the bounty hunters.
I like that. That's a cool
Yeah, I like
sunsetting on the one of the best bounty hunters ever.
Yeah.
Is he becomes the bounty hunter handler for the New Republic and then
Yeah,
the bounty
yeah.
hunting guild. That's a good ending for him, I think.
Yeah. So there's my Boba Fett show.
Brilliant.
I like that.
First things first, I love the idea of getting the Suicide Squad together
Yeah.
to take down Luke Skywalker,
Yeah.
Han and Leia.
I
Like
love
the
that.
big heroes.
That's a brilliant
Yeah.
conceit. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that a lot.
I just don't see that. Like that's kind of the thing that I was always expecting. And I had to remember this. Back when the initial pitch came out, I'm like, he goes after them. Surely he goes after them.
Yeah.
They just,
yeah.
quote, killed him. You know?
Yeah, no, that's something I thought about as well, and something I was like I got through the first 4 episodes because that was like the first idea I had, and I was like, I really love that. I wrote all the way up to the ring job and taking out the Pikes and all that stuff and getting betrayed, and then he's alone, and I'm like, okay, how do I take this and go into Luke Skywalkerville? Like, how do I take that right turn? And nothing I came up with. I wrote like 4 or 5 different versions. Couldn't come up with anything I liked. And just like, okay, less is more. Just have it about the Pikes, and just did like the Pike story and stuff. But I was thinking for a second season, if I ever was to bother writing a beat sheet for it or episode outline, it would look sort of not like yours at all.
Yeah, that's fair.
It would be Kira and like her new version of the Crimson Dawn working with Han and Luke and forcing Boba Fett to work with them.
Right.
And him being tempted back to, the underworld, and him just wanting to get away from all of this. He's like, I got my revenge. I should be dead. And I don't want him to have a happy ending, personally. I don't think he deserves it. I think he's been an evil bounty hunter for a really long time, and he deserves to die.
Yep.
But what kind of death is the real question?
Death in battle.
Death in battle.
Glorious death. At the hands of like a great foe, like someone like Luke.
See, I just don't think he deserves glory, though.
No,
Yeah.
I hate
like the Sarlacc pit. Do you think he deserves that sort of like wimpy death?
Oh, an ironic death of him like
Once again.
He gets out, but then gets kicked back into the Sarlacc pit.
No, that's
really
the whole
funny.
show. The whole show is actually just a vine of he climbs out and Luke's there to kick him in.
That'd be really funny.
Oh man.
There's definitely like some dramatic irony there of like he has the chance to be good and to give it all up and to turn over a new leaf. And then he chooses not to do that.
Yeah.
And it leads to him being thrown back into the Sarlacc pit and never to escape again, kind of thing.
See, I think a similar thing. I don't know if I do it as goofy, but I do think that's hilarious.
It's really funny.
Yeah, I feel like since we mentioned, Walter White being a bit of an analog, I feel like he is a character whose end does need to be the result of his pride and him getting himself into that situation.
And his twisted sense of honor.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right, he worked with Vader personally, and that's something that it's almost like they completely brushed over.
They did in the show.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that I don't believe in the, people who have done evil things can turn over a leaf. Sure, I absolutely believe that.
Yeah.
I just would prefer to tell that with someone who's not Boba Fett.
No,
I want to keep him like as just this evil piece of shit.
Yeah,
exactly.
And when I say I want him to be like head of the Bounty Hunters Guild, it's not that he's like agreeing to work with the New Republic. It's just that like if this is the state of bounty hunting, here's how I can make my money now.
Yeah.
And I can't hunt anymore. And maybe they don't even know that he's there. Maybe it's this unknown figure, and he's like, "Hey, it's me. Secretly, I'm Boba Fett. I'm still here. Fuck you."
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I also guess I have a question for Boba Fett. It's like, what drives him as a character? Because he was raised by Jango Fett.
Yep.
And raised to be a bounty hunter. Grew up through the Empire and the Clone Wars. So he's just like lived through war his entire life and conflict, and the only thing he knows is bounty hunting and how to track people across the galaxy, hunt them, and bring them in cold or warm.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Here's the thing. I think Django's actually a much better person
Yes.
than Boba was.
100%.
Yes.
Like, Boba is just heartless killer. He saw his dad die in front of his eyes when he was 10 years old.
Exactly.
It sets him up for this life of just being a horrible piece of shit who only cares about money and himself. That's it. Django was a father, willingly a father.
Yeah.
He cared about
chose
something
for it,
other than himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe that could be something interesting.
It would be interesting
Yeah,
to follow the idea of like maybe, having fatherhood forced upon Boba Fett and having him decide to choose to be a father or choose not to.
But
Mando.
Grogu.
But then you're just getting these stories that people are getting sick of already.
No,
It's-
no,
it's just God of War. It's just Last of Us.
And I wouldn't even put it as that, as like, he has to have fatherhood forced upon him. Just like a reconsideration of the fact that his dad did actually care about something other than himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe just give Boba the opportunity
Yeah.
to care about something other than himself.
Yeah, I definitely think Boba needs to reflect on his life and like even come to know Django in a way that he never got to know as well, because I imagine that would haunt him his whole life.
He should meet another living clone.
Yeah,
That's not bad.
I can see that.
Fucking a character in a show that I don't care about, Bad Batch, is Echo in that show.
Yeah.
There's a potential like instead of having it in that whatever show that I don't like,
Yeah.
have him find Echo somewhere in some Imperial facility where they're keeping her or something.
Yeah, because his relationship with clones in those few episodes in Clone Wars, when he ended up betraying them, he as a kid, he was kind of torn because he was kind of like, in a way, these guys are my brothers, but fuck it, I got a job to do. And he blows up the ship.
Yeah, but Yeah, but now, like, with the fact that he's kind of the only one, if he did encounter another clone, I think that would be something very personal.
There would be the chance to be like, I gave up on this, and I lost my dad. I never felt close to the clones.
Yeah.
They had each other. I had no one.
Yeah.
But the idea of maybe the last clone, and it is like a young girl or a young boy or something, and it's like, oh, we're alone together now. Maybe we can have this dynamic.
Yeah.
I feel like there's more opportunity for that than there is for something like, you know, all of these, maybe even like The Mandalorian, where it is what some fucking Mando finds a baby and he's like, I guess I care about this baby.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a lot more compelling to do it with Boba Fett, but anyway.
Yeah. But at the same time, I feel like Boba should be that grittier character doing those darker stories.
It's true.
But I feel like on the notion of him, you know, connecting with his past, that's why I think, even though they totally blew up Kamino in the Bad Batch, I feel like the ruins of Kamino is an interesting place. And what I was thinking, like, my show is, it's an extra galactic place. It's outside the galaxy. It's a great place to hide away if you're on the run. So I feel like putting him there, you know, that forces him to really, like, reconcile with his past. And in terms of what motivates him, he feels like a character who would care about his legacy. And I think that's what, it's not the money, it's the name and the memory he'll leave behind as this fearsome warrior.
And I think he wants to carry on his father's name, because Jango Fett was a bounty hunter as well. And he's like, I have taken on the Fett mantle and the Mandalorian mantle, and I have improved upon it. Like, I have become like the most legendary bounty hunter.
Wants to pass on the mantle of Fett.
What if he...
There's a possibility there.
What if he clones himself or wants to clone himself?
Oh, wow.
That'd be really interesting. But he wants to have his son clone as well. Like, that's where the show ends off. It's like, that's the end of his arc of like, I need a son.
Yeah.
I need a me.
But yeah, finding a foundling, I think, you know, it's just annoying because we've seen so much of this story sort of done poorly, where it is like the young apprentice to the old dad.
Yeah.
But it feels like he's much better set up for that story than a lot of other characters we've seen in other media.
Interesting, like, criticism there of Mando itself is because at the end of the first episode, we have Grogu. And then he does, again, over 2 or 3 episodes, actually start to care about Grogu. I don't think we see him be ruthless enough.
Yeah.
To have its, you know, like we initially kind of like it has that bit with that guy who is just like, boom, carbon freeze because I'm a bounty hunter.
But he didn't kill him.
No, exactly.
He carbon freezed
like
him.
Mando was morally always pretty okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and in the first episode, he decides not to kill this baby. He's just like, oh, it's a baby. I can't kill it. Why? Why not?
Yeah. Has he killed babies before?
We don't know. We don't know anything about this guy.
We have to assume not. Boba Fett definitely has.
Boba Fett's definitely killed babies.
Yeah. Boba Fett burnt Owen and Beru alive. I believe that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But here's something that I struggle with, though. So with the whole, I love the conceit of having, it's called the Crate's Claw, is one of the bounty hunter guilds that they had back in the day. It had Bosk, Boba Fett, Dengar, and another one in there. That was like one of the organizations they called themselves, and that split up at some point. I was just reading through Wikipedia.
God,
and
it's dense.
It's so dense. And it's all like comic stuff, but you get some of those guys back together. You get some of like this bounty hunter crew that was on The Empire Strikes Back hunting Han Solo.
Yep.
And they go after Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Leia. But like you arrived at, they can't capture them. They can't kill them.
No.
Because we have all of these stories afterwards that rely on Luke and everything being there. They can't win that.
Yeah.
So
temporary wins, false victories.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, it's fun, but at the same time, it's like ultimately you know where that story's going to go.
Yep.
And there's no real surprises there, I guess.
I mean, I think the surprises are in those false victories. It's like every time that they do overcome the odds and they manage to get another one of the crew, it's like, wow, okay. But then when it comes to it's just Luke left, you think maybe there's a chance they get him, but no, definitely not. He's a Jedi.
And then they go after the Hutts and then have to kill all the Hutts because they failed. And then Boba Fett fails again. So he's already failed to protect Jabba, and then he fails to collect the bounty on all 6 of these New Republic fools.
Yeah. It's a series of failures, and his only kind of victory is just the fact that he's not dead at the end of it all.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
Any final notes before we close out the show?
No, I think this was really fun. I think it's there's so much freedom when it comes to this character. Again,
I think that's like the promise of the bounty hunter stories in Star Wars. Yeah. And the promise, we had it. We had it for a beautiful moment with Mando season 1 and 2.
We were on the verge of greatness. We were this close.
And we should have had more. Boba Fett should have been more of that. And it could have been any of these 3 ideas from today. It could have been anything to do with Boba Fett taking on an apprentice of some kind and learning to be not such a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Anything.
It's true, though. It's just the underworld is the untapped, like, mine of Star Wars stories that has not been explored.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone should really include it in a version of the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, they should.
Wait a minute.
If you want to hear more about our version of the underworld, go check out some of our episodes. They're great. I love the underworld one. It's really fun.
That was a great plug.
It was a great film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been Fixing the Sequel Trilogy, and we're here every week talking about Star Wars and writing. If you want to see more, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And while you're there, make sure to give us a 5 stars, follow, like, and subscribe, etc., etc. We'll be back next week with another episode, but until then, may the Force be with you.